Hey nerds, we're heading back to Westeros for A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, HBO's newest addition to the Game of Thrones universe. But this isn't your typical throne story. No grand politics, no dragon warfare, just a hedge knight, his squire, and the open road. Does a smaller scale adventure work? Let's find out right now. Welcome back to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan. As always, if you want to skip ahead of this intro to my analysis, rating, or breakdown, check the chapter links below. So this premiere episode, The Hedge Knight, is available on HBO and HBO Max starting on Sunday, January 18th. We should get this recording out, depending on how long it takes to edit, that night or the morning afterwards. Runs about 43 minutes, shorter than our typical Game of Thrones episode, which is the intention for this more intimate story. So let's kick things off with our spoiler-free logline. Set 90 years before Game of Thrones, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms follows Ser Duncan the Tall, a young hedge knight of humble origins, as he travels toward a tournament at Ashford Meadows. Along the way, he meets a perceptive young boy named Egg, who becomes his squire. What they don't know is that their partnership will shape the future of Westeros. The show will release weekly through January 29th, 6 episodes total. These are shorter episodes, 30 to 45 minutes each, which, as I said, is intentional. Episode 2 is titled Hard Salt Beef, and it will drop next Sunday. All right, so this premiere is directed by Owen Harris, best known for his work on Black Mirror, including the San Junipero and Striking Vipers episodes. Harris directed the first 3 episodes and serves as an executive producer on the show, setting the visual tone for the series. The pilot is written by showrunner Ira Parker, alongside George R.R. Martin himself. Parker previously worked on the first season of House of the Dragon and the HBO show The Sympathizer. The score is by Dan Romer, who previously worked on Beast of the Southern Wild and Luca soundtrack, a very different musical voice than Raymond Brody's iconic Game of Thrones work. All right, let's jump into a quick rundown of the cast. Peter Claffrey plays Ser Duncan the Tall, or Dunk, a hedge knight of low-born background, nearly 7 feet tall, naive but courageous. You might recognize him from Bad Sisters, Vikings, Valhalla, or the BBC show Wreck. Fun fact, he's a former rugby player who represented Ireland at the U20 level. He is 6 feet, 5 inches tall in real life. Dexter Soul Anzo plays Egg, a child whose past will unfold over the season, I'm sure, who becomes Dunk's squire. He played Cornelius Snow in The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And finally, for this episode, Daniel Ings plays Sir Lionel, the Laughing Storm Baratheon. Heir to House Baratheon, you know him from The Gentleman, I Hate Susie, and Sex Education. We'll see lots of other people over the season, but I think these are the most important people for this particular episode. All right, I'm gonna start analyzing this episode. Let's dig in. So the tone here is much lighter than we're used to from Westeros, almost slapstick at times. But don't let that fool you. The familiar elements of class and peril are still very much present. There's no violence in the first episode. Given the world we've re-entered, we know it could come at the slightest provocation or whim from the upper classes. It's distinctively much smaller scale, which I guess is fitting since the show is meant to follow the small folk, as they're called in this world. The people who suffer at the hands of the nobles playing their Game of Thrones. Ira Parker called it the scrappy upstart of the Thrones world. I think both descriptions are probably accurate. The performances, Peter Claffrey has a great physical presence and the comedic timing to pull off doltish, but his hangdog performance makes you really feel for Dunk, even when the character seems a bit dim. He also seems fundamentally kind. Any unkind things he says feels like him trying to live up to the stern example set by Sir Arlen, the knight he squired for. You can see from Peter's performance that harshness isn't Dunk's true nature, and Egg seems to see through it too, since the semi-harsh words are spoken to a boy that Dunk believes is in a position very similar to the one that he found himself in with Sir Aaron. Dexter Soul Ansel as Egg isn't in this episode a lot, but he makes quite an impression. He definitely comes off as canny, but at the same time, wide-eyed. Very different opposing qualities to balance in one person, especially one so young. As for the supporting cast, Raymond Fosway seems nice enough, but there's not enough of him yet in this this episode to make a real impression. However, Sir Lionel, the Laughingstone Baratheon, played by Daniel Ings, is great. Very jolly and charismatic, but there's something mercurial about him too. It's hard to tell, but he seems as good a man as a noble can be, while still being quite entitled. He's definitely one to watch. So the production design, the trappings here are much smaller, befitting the station of Dunk holds. Lots of small, cramped rooms, tents, mostly outdoors, in the hedge, as they say. It definitely feels like the same universe, but we're seeing the places that the noblemen and the other shows would travel between or hide in to consort with the small folk before going back to their grander buildings. The tents of the noblemen and the knights are appropriately grand for their station, and there's a definite difference between the wardrobe of Dunk and, say, Manford or Lionel. The class distinctions are very clear. So, next question you might have is, how close is this adaptation to the original? In this regard, I'm probably a lot like the audience. My exposure to this world is through the show, so I don't know how things differ from the source material until I research week to week. Based on my research, I know that Martin said, I still look at The Hedge Knight as one of the best things I've ever done. He also said that the show is very similar to what I wrote. That's encouraging for book fans. So, where does that leave us? The premiere of Knight of the Seven Kingdoms earns from me a 6 out of 10, which is a date night on our scale. And if you're unfamiliar with our scale, it is down below in the description. It's a lazy watch with a slow start, but there's a lot of potential here for a pleasant, lower key show compared to the usual Game of Thrones. If you're coming in expecting red weddings and dragon battles, recalibrate your expectations. But if you're open to something smaller and more human, this might be exactly what the franchise needed. All right, so since I am going to release this after the episode has debuted, I'm going to actually start breaking this down now. If you are enjoying the review so far, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. And with that, spoilers ahead. If you haven't watched the episode yet, this is your cue to pause, go watch it, and then come back. All right. So the episode starts with Duncan burying his master, Sir Arlen Pennytree, under a tree. Dunk speaks to the body as he works, stumbling through a makeshift eulogy, saying that he doesn't know what the right words are. He reflects on the years together with awkward fondness, thanking him for never beating him when he didn't deserve it. The flashbacks in this are actually pretty funny. He then starts to weigh his options. He could sell the 3 horses and eat like a king for a few years. Then he'd become an outlaw and a beggar. He could the city, King's Landing or Lannisport, join the city watch, but Arlen's sword, they play the triumphant Game of Thrones. The next scene, him squat over a tree, relieving himself. Not just relieving himself, actually crapping violently. This is the first clue that this is not going to be like the other shows. I think the scene he's established is earnest, slightly dim, but deeply loyal. His relationship with Arlen seemed genuine, more father than master. The sword and armor seems to be his only inheritance. All right, so in Act 1, we see Dunk on the road to Ashford. He spots a bald boy, assumes that he's a stable boy. He berates him a little bit, and then he goes inside to get served by the innkeeper, who mentions that half a town has gone to the tourney. And a drunken young nobleman slurs, "I've dreamed of you," before he shoot off. So I did some research here, and this is probably Prince Daeron. He's probably the drunk who recognizes him. A subtle early hint that Targaryens are closer than Dunk realizes. So Prince Daeron Targaryen, he has dragon dreams, the prophetic dreams similar to King Aegon's sister and wife. And this is something that plagues the Targaryen line. Some have prophetic visions. Daeron's gift is real, even if he's usually too drunk to act on them. In the next scene, we see a small confrontation between Dunk as he catches Egg trying his armor on, and he reacts curiously. Egg asks to come to squire for him, and Dunk refuses. Dunk softens here a little bit, and he reveals his own orphan background and how Arlen took him in and taught him arms riding and everything really the best he could. But he still refuses. He also says he's better off without him, gives him a tip that he throws to the floor that he is confident he'll scoop up when he leaves, but we never actually see the boy scoop it up, which is probably another hint. Egg is established as clever, persistent, and speaks above his station as a stable boy. The first hint of their dynamic Egg sees through Dunk's pretenses. Dunk's self-doubt is already evident here. He doesn't believe he's worth following. Next we are in Ashford Meadows, where Dunk arrives at the tournament ground grounds and approaches Plumber, the master of games, to try to enter the tourney. After Plumber teases him by saying that there's an Ashford chair that might lead to graphic torture if he's pretending to be a knight and he isn't. He does say that he needs someone to vouch for him because there's princes about. He also warns him that if he loses his bout, he's going to lose his armor. Dunk thinks that he'll be able to get someone to vouch for him from the House of Dondarrion, seated at Blackhaven in the Dornish marshes, because Ser Arlen helped hunt the Vulture King, the Dornish outlaw lord. So he's hoping that he'll be recognized. So then we get to the Dondarrion pavilion, the Dondarrion servants seeking Manford, and the servants mock him gently, explaining that hedge knights sleep in the hedges because no lord will have them. They suggest he try Stefan Fossaway instead. Dunk does then encounter Sir Stefan Fossaway and his cousin, Raymond. Stefan notices his sword and then he challenges him to a fight, which Dunk refuses. So the House Fossaway will later split into the red and the green branches. Stefan represents the senior branch, which he never lets Raymond forget. So in Act 3, Dunk returns to the Dondarrion pavilion. Sir Manford is still napping a gaudito, and the women attending Manford speak with Dunk while he waits. They mock him again, and then Dunk protests, but they soften a bit. They apologize for mocking him because they were only warning him off because they see a lot of green boys turning, all with glory in their minds, but never in their hands. And the whore warns that he should be good to his body because it might be the last one you like to have. Then we see a scene that may become important later on as Duncan wanders into Tan's puppet show while waiting for Manford. He's entranced by Tanzel, played by Tanzine Crawford, a puppeteer spinning tales. The show performs a song that serves as a heavy foreshadowing for Egg's hidden identity, which I'm not going to get into in this video. A brave hero forging on, leaving all he knows behind, a father and a friend, may seem the world unkind. Fate has set his lonely path through corridors of chance. A boy from nothing risked it all, ignoring all the scars. Perhaps he's only stupid, holding fast his mirror shield. Great honor, his ambition must keep a truth concealed. For if his humble shape is bared for foul and fiery demise, should the dragon discover none but a man in great disguise. So this is probably describing both Dunk and Egg, a truth concealed in a dragon. And I'll let you do your own research or draw your own conclusions here. So Raymond Fossaway then finds Dunk and apologizes for urging him to spar with Stefan. He told him he likes to beat men in the yard, and he makes it up to him by offering him some food and taking him to Lionel's tent. Dunk eats, and we are first introduced to Lionel, where he's charismatically holding court and making philosophical proclamations about jousting being invented 4,000 years ago. He's obviously very drunk, and then he calls Dunk over to his table to question him about his height and his comportment. He then questions why he's in his tent. It seems like a very dangerous situation for Duncan for a moment, but tensions break when Duncan says that he just came in to get some food. He wasn't trying to buy any favor from Lionel, and then Lionel asks him to dance, which again, from my review, this is the one scene that gives you the sense that he's at least an okay guy, because he lets him step on his foot and push him while they're dancing, which is something that most lords wouldn't let him do. And then after the dance, he actually tries to impart some wisdom to him about being decisive. And Duncan says that he thinks he agonizes too much. He's wondering whether or not it makes sense for him to enter the tournament, because he is quick and strong, sure, but so is Lionel, and Lionel has also been trained, so he wonders what chance does he have. Lionel rejoins probably no chance, but it's a great honor to test themselves. And Dunk actually has a pretty wise response here himself. He says that it's easy for him to say because he has a name and an inheritance. If Dunk loses, he won't be able to ransom his horseback. Important note here that Lionel is an ancestor of Robert Baratheon. He embodies, of course, the Baratheon swagger that we saw with Robert in the first season of Game of Thrones. His advice is actually sound, despite him being very drunk. In the next act, we actually see Dunk finally catch up to Sir Manford Dondarrion, played by Daniel Monks. He's finally awake with the same boys were chiding him earlier on in the episode. He doesn't remember Sir Arlen because 800 men went into the mountains on behalf of his father's service, and some of them had much greater harm to them by being wounded. And Duncan protests that he won't be able to challenge unless a knight or a lord will vouch for him. And Manford says that's not really any of his business and then leaves. So this episode ends with Egg reuniting with Dunk. So the kid apparently got on a lamb cart and followed him. Dunk threatens to take him home, but then he sees what he has done. He's washed clothes, made a fire, caught some fish, and groomed the horses, which makes him soften. Then what follows is a conversation about what Duncan should be calling himself, which is probably not Ser Dunk. Egg says it's Dunk, short for Duncan, and then Dunk names himself Ser Duncan the Tall. Then they come to an agreement, and Dunk says that he'll let him squire for him, and he'll make sure that he never goes hungry because he looks like he doesn't eat. He also says if you swear to do what you're told during the tourney, you can be my knight during the tourney, and then we'll see after that. And if he proves his worth, he'll have clothes on his back and food in his belly. He says that the clothes might be rough and the food might be salt beef or salt fish, but he won't go hungry. And he also promises not to beat him when he doesn't deserve it, which I guess, again, is him reflecting Ser Arlen. He's basically offers exactly what Ser Arlen once offered him, one hedge knight raising the next. Neither of them know their true story yet. As they settle into sleep, a star shoots across the sky. Stars bring luck, Egg says, and he tells them to go to sleep. And then Egg notes that all the knights in the pavilions by now are staring up at silt instead of the sky. Then Dunk tells him to, again, go to sleep. But then he considers for a moment and he says that the luck is going to be just ours. And then you see a slight smile spread across Egg's face. Dunk begins this episode alone, burying his only family. He ends it with a new companion under the stars. The fallen star will become Dunk's sigil covering Ser Arlen's shield sigil. His legacy is continuing here. The luck is ours. It seems Dunk already sees them as partners, which is why I think Egg smiles. So this premiere does something Game of Thrones really did. It made me smile a bit, more than once. Not because it's simplistic or naive. The world is still harsh. The class division's brutal, and Dunk's prospects look bleak. But because it believes in something. Dunk believes in what Knight should be, and the show believes in Dunk. Standout elements are, again, Peter Claffley, perfectly embodiment of the big, earnest, slightly dim hero. His physical presence combined with that underlying insecurity, the way he slouches, the way he doubts himself, is, I think, pitch perfect for this character. Dexter Soul, Ansley's Egg, being clever without being precocious, already showing the wisdom that will serve him later on in life. And there's a genuine chemistry between them. It makes you want to follow their adventures. Daniel Ings steals the scenes as Lionel Baratheon, charismatic, drunk, and surprisingly profound. The show understands that these smaller character moments are what make Westeros feel lived in. Is a slow build. Essentially, most of it is one long day of Dunk trying and failing to find someone who will vouch for him. But that's the point about who gets to participate, who doesn't. It's about the gap between what knighthood should mean and what it actually means. And the episode ends not with a triumph, but with a quiet moment under the stars. Two nobodies who found each other. If you're a Game of Thrones fan who needs dragons and political scheming, this might not be for you. But if you're open to something smaller, warmer, and surprisingly hopeful for the franchise, I'd give Knight of the Seven Kingdoms a chance. So that's our breakdown for The Hedge Knight, the first episode of this series. Next week we'll be covering episode 2, Hard Salt Beef, and with Dunk still needing someone to vouch for him and a new squire to look after, things should be interesting. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review and breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get alerts for when we drop our next review of this show. See you in the next one. Bye, guys.